and finish this off. Can I start by saying a big thank you for this week. I actually have found it a massive blessing to me on a number of different levels. A number of different modes, a number of different aspects. It's been a real blessing, not in the least the speakers that have preceded me and daunted me by having to follow them. But no, that's been wonderful, and for PTI and their hospitality as well. It's been a real blessing. Can I start with a little bit of biographical details about me, just to kind of help set the scene? The last time that I spoke to a bunch of academic colleagues like this was back in 1993, 19 or so years ago, and this was my topic. Down at Monash University, it was from some research that I just had published. The spatial and temporal distribution of sediment-associated heavy metals in the morphology of the Hawkesbury River floodplain. You might be pleased to know I'm actually not going to be delivering the same talk today. But by way of autobiography, Mark introduced us to Frank and his ferret. Now, I loved Mark's kind of focus here on the goodness of creation and its richness and our abilities to be creative and what floats our boat in terms of God's creation. For Frank, I think he was Frank, was he, or Ron? Ron. Frank works great for me, Frank and his ferret. One of the things that floats my boat is landscapes. Right from a little boy, I've been almost kind of half obsessed with landscapes, morphology, and geomorphology, which is the processes that form those landscapes. I just loved that, and so I went to at high school and went to university and pursued that. However, at high school I was very much a child of Descartes and Hobbes. I was an atheist. I thought that science, rationality, could explain everything. In fact, I put rationality up here. And then into university and studying science like this. However, God had other plans for me, and through university I became a Christian. And you know what, when I first became a Christian, my passion for landscapes and the understanding of how they form and the variety and so forth, I felt kind of guilty about that for a while. I felt this is a waste of my time. And science too. Well, science has got its problems though. And I actually have come to learn through the decade and a half of time that I've spent working in Christian schools now. God had other plans for me. It wasn't to progress in science. Through circumstances placed into Christian schools. Decade and a half of learning and having this Copernican revolution almost about creation and how rich and this big view of God's gospel, not just about my personal salvation. And so I love now it's not in the sense of scientific research into morphology. I photograph now. I love taking landscape photography. And you've got some wonderful landscape photographers here in New Zealand, by the way, as well as some wonderful landscapes. I've been looking at them, they're fantastic. Frank the ferret, he isn't the only person, Mark. This is Macca from Broken Hill. He also loves ferrets as well. And did you know there is a sport called ferret legging? Anyone been to a ferret legging competition? No. Ferret legging is the sport where the one who is able to keep the ferret in his pants the longest wins. We watched YouTube videos this morning, Simon and I, two blokes, side by side. And what they say is they get agitated ferrets, not just any old ferret. And these are, what was the phrase? Fully fanged, fully clawed, agitated ferrets. I don't know how they agitate them. Into their pants are sealed down the bottom, then they seal them at the top, and the person who can last the longest wins. For me, it's the processes that form in a gravel bed river. For some, it's
the national sport of Herefordshire.
Oh, that's painful.
National sport of Herefordshire.
What we're going to look at today is, Mark spoke of different types of knowing in the last session. I'd like to explore a little bit this, what I'm calling digital knowing. Not quite in the same sense that Mark is using it, Well, what I want to talk about is how the digital technologies that are ubiquitous and our young people are completely immersed in is actually changing their way of knowing, their view of the world and so forth. And if you just indulge me a little bit before we start to just do a bit of a recap of what we've been talking about, some of the things we've been talking about, and also to help set the scene, I would like to talk about this notion of worldview. Your view of the world. First thing, what do you think these two women are thinking of each other? Everything covered but her eyes. What a cruel, male-dominated culture. But what's the other one thinking? Nothing covered but her eyes. What a cruel, male-dominated culture. Wow. The context in which we come from have a significant influence. We've said this. Influence in our worldview.
That's very good.
Or, as Francis Schaeffer says, everyone has a worldview. I love this quote from him. All people have a worldview, and nobody, whether ditch digger or professional thinker, can live without one. And did someone say this week, no one can actually get out of bed in the morning without a worldview? You have one. Now, I loved Ken's talk about maybe we need alternative words, phrases, descriptions of this, of worldview. So Ken, I've thought about it. You've put the challenge out there and I've come up with it. I've got I think, nice and small little catch-all for an alternative to worldview. Ready? Can I have a drum roll, please? Okay. It is this. It is the visceral, the default, the everyday, story-shaped religious view of life and others, the world and yourself.
That'll do it.
That's a great title for Life 101.
Good.
Good. So go back to all your documents and start changing them all. I actually think that maybe we don't need a name at all for this thing. We can just talk about metaphors for it. I love it's a pretty overdone one perhaps, but the idea of the glasses that you put on.
Yeah.
So people will talk about putting your biblical glasses on so that you can see the world truly. I like the idea of the 3D glasses. You know, you go to a 3D film and you sit there and everyone does it. You lift them up and look at it. Oh, you know, so, and you suddenly see things correctly, truly, if you like. I like that metaphor. I like this one from Olpheus as well. He talks about a set of internal hinges. And he says, your worldview is a set of hinges on which all our everyday thinking and doing turns. I like that. Or maybe, leave metaphors behind, maybe we just need to focus on these worldview questions that we spoke of as well. I think these are fantastic for helping us to diagnose our worldview, but also pedagogically helpful for teaching discernment about worldview as well, as Mark has pointed out. And these are, I mean, there's a good number of them, and I think it was Ken suggested a couple of others too that I wrote down. But the who am I, where am I, what is wrong, how is it fixed? So, how does this work? Well, to steal some resources from Mark's website actually, if you took, say, a Buddhist view of life and the world, who, I believe I'm a distinct individual, but this is all part of an illusion. Where am I? I'm living in an impermanent and illusory world full of suffering. The problem is life is saturated with suffering and insatiable cravings. I'm attached to my possessions and worldly ambitions. The solution, well, it's just to get rid of desire and craving and to follow the noble eightfold path. What about a Nazi understanding of life? Now remember, the Nazis had a kind of pseudo-Christian underpinning as well as a very Darwinian underpinning. See if you can see both of those coming out. I am either a savage predator or a weak animal who is ripe for destruction. Where am I? I'm living in a cruel and pitiless world. All life is a struggle for survival of the fittest. The problem, we've allowed the weak to survive. We have given in to our sinful feelings of compassion and we have sinned against nature. Solution, ugly as it is, we must repent and embrace the cruelty of nature. We must eliminate weak people and parasitic races. We know where that led to. I'll let you have a read of, say, a Renaissance man.
haven't got the grey shoes up there, Chris.
No, I'm not.
No,
No,
yeah.
oh yeah. That's a new age. We must master and conquer nature with science and technology, eliminate the enemies of progress. Scientists are gods. A new perfected humanity will enjoy a wonderful utopia. Very strong theme is this idea that where we're heading towards? Well, we're heading towards a utopia created by humans. What about Richard Dawkins? This is a quote from him, I am a surviving machine, blindly programmed to preserve the selfish molecules known as genes. There's no religious perspectives there at all, so that's good. I am living in a heartless, pitiless nature. The physical world is all there is. Goodness and evil, just illusions. Religion, faith and superstition thwart the inevitable triumph of science and reason. Well, the solution is we must believe and trust in science and reason. This will bring enlightenment to the world. And also, if you think of Dawkins, we must also be evangelists of this as well, as part of his, very much part of his religious belief. A Hollywood worldview. I've stolen this from Mark. I love this little analysis here. And this is a worldview that's very much one that is impacting our young people through their media the music they listen to and so forth, stories they read, TV shows they watch. Who am I? I'm an autonomous captain of my own destiny. I'm living in a dangerous but exciting world. The problem will lazy and unambitious people waste their lives and end up losers. Remember, do you have The Biggest Loser here in New Zealand as well? And shows like that, those sort of reality TV shows, it's all about just getting in there. You can do it. The power is inside you. Just tap into it, unleash it, and you'll have success. Solution? Work very hard. Unleash your talent potential. Believe in yourself and your ability. With hard graft and a little luck, you can become a big success and enjoy abundant consumption. Can I show you a little video that's actually having a little bit... I'm using this to have a little bit of a dig at the Hollywood worldview. What I'd really like to look at today, as I've said, is this, what I'm calling digital epistemology, digital knowing. And let's look at our digital immigrants, like our digital natives. You're familiar with that term, someone who's been born into a world where digital technologies are everywhere. They've just always existed for them. So let's look at our digital native and ask these questions. Well, who am I? I am an individual who is free to construct my own identity and digital representations of myself. We'll explore that a little bit more later. Where am I? I'm living in a world of infinite technological possibilities. The problem is, one of the problems in this world, people place expectations and relational demands on me that I do not wish to be bothered with. The solution was easy. I will use some form of technology to mediate between me and the aspects of reality that place unwanted expectations on me. I will choose, via my devices, what information I will engage with, what people I will relate to, and when, and I will use technology to create and to recreate my identity.
Yes, very good.
And that's what I'd like us to focus on today. Because these technologies are substantially reshaping, forming their view of life, their view of themselves and others, and the connectedness of those things. It's changing their kind of way of knowing. So of course we know that our students now are these digital natives. I presume your undergraduate students at BTI, they're basically all digital natives now coming to you. But we know that that's getting younger and younger, how they're being connected. I spoke to a kindergarten, so that has different meanings, I know. Year 5 age teacher, and she said that she has 6 kids in her kindergarten class that have mobile phones. So we're talking smartphones with internet connectivity and so forth. And so they're getting younger and younger.
Brilliant.
Now you see what I did there? Sorry.
Yes.
Sublime to the ridiculous.
Different heights. You see what I did there? From the sublime to the ridiculous. And it got you. Are you with me?
And the best passage too.
So now we need to think about education, don't we? Because, as it's Peter, isn't it? Peter introduced me and said, yes, the educational landscape is substantially changing because of these new technologies. Not just learning, but teaching is changing as well. Not just the way our students engage with these technologies to learn, but the way our teaching is going. Is having to change, is changing. That's a debate we could have. There is a digital education revolution. In fact, in Australia, our Prime Minister, who at the time was the Minister for Education, said, yes, we have a digital education revolution and we're ushering it in. And they chucked billions of dollars at that. There is this growing excitement because of all the vast possibilities. This is a quote from one of the evangelists of this, Professor Stephen Hebble, one of your mates from England, I think they're Rocky, and he says, we are, as I've often reflected, facing the death of education, but are very much at the dawn of learning. 21st century learning looks pretty exciting, and today's learners with today's pocketable, personal, connected ICT are showing us very, very clearly just how good learning might be. We ignore that at our peril. Now, there's a whole lot we could talk about there and unpack. But let's just, for the sake of today, say yes, change is on its way, and we need to be considering that. One of the examples, just by way of example, of the change in pedagogy being suggested is the notion of the flipped classroom. Familiar with this idea? A few books have come out about it. Started off by the Khan Academy. A guy called Khan set up this YouTube video clips where he was teaching his niece across the country some mathematic ideas by doing a video of them. That really took off. He set up the Khan Academy. And now maths teachers all over America are flipping their classrooms, which means what they do is, instead of doing a demonstration of something in their classroom to the kids, and then saying, now go home and your homework is to do some exercises around that. The notion is that's crazy because the teacher is not with them when they're doing the actual stuff. That's when they need a tutor. So flip that around. Record some videos of you doing the demonstrations, and now we have some wonderful technologies that can really help that process. Send them home to watch the demonstrations. They come to class, and they're free then, the teacher is free then to walk around. I've got a video that I want to show you from someone who has taken this approach. Just again by way of example.
I'm Aaron Sands, and I teach science here at Woodland Park High School. My ultimate goal, I guess, as a teacher is to help students become learners who can learn for themselves and by themselves. One of the problems that I was guilty of even prior to flipping my classroom around was the classroom was centered around me. I told them exactly what to learn, how to learn it, what assignments to do to learn it, and when to learn it, and how to prove to me that they learned it. I don't do that anymore. We changed the place in which content is delivered. Instead of standing in front of a class and delivering, here's how you do this type of problem, here's how this works, I deliver that direct instruction now asynchronously at home through these videos that we make with Camtasia Studio. Times till whole. We didn't do that last time. The last step, they were already whole numbers. We had 1, 1, and 4. Here we don't have a whole number. So here's a few little tricks when you need to multiply by whole numbers. If one of your numbers ends in 0.5, you're going to multiply by 2.
Something 0.5 times it by 2.
Right.
Okay, write this down, guys.
Yes. If something ends in 0.3 or 0.33 or 0.66, you multiply by 3. When the kids come to class, they don't show up to learn new stuff. They show up to apply the things that they learned at home and to ask me questions about the things they learned at home. So now they can have my lesson, if you will, but I would normally have stood up and lectured to them in class with some added features. They get that at home. And then what they were expected to do for homework is now what they do in the class. Life is different for me because I no longer am the guy who stands up in the front of the classroom and just yaks at a student for an hour or however long the class is. Now, I walk around the class and I help kids. I'm a tutor, I'm a guide, I'm the putter outer of fires, whatever it happens to be. In my crazy chemistry class, I walk around and do that. I don't stand up front and teach under the kind of the traditional model. I'm Aaron Sams. I'm a teacher. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. And I love Camtasia Studio.
And I love coffee.
Wow.
You know, I just offer that as an example. You've got the actual book there. I've not read it. You recommend it?
It's good. Yeah, I just thought I'd pass it round
Sure.
if anyone wanted to have a look at it.
But then my question is, why is this still intruding into the home? And the question's not about the
You
technology.
just jumped in front of me there, and I was just about to say, there's so much we could say, and there's so much we could critique, there's so much we could, but let's not. I'm only offering this as a kind of example of some of the different pedagogical paradigm shifts almost that are being suggested. Is that okay? Thank you. Just last week, a newspaper article that said, as digital learning platforms continue to personalise education, some executives at McGrath-Hill believe schools, particularly at the high school level, will need to rethink grouping students by age instead of organise students by competency. So again, some of the implications of some of this thing. But of course, technology and education have had a little bit of a checkered past, haven't they? This is from 1907. Students today depend too much upon ink. They don't know how to use a penknife to sharpen a pencil. Pen and ink will never replace the pencil.
Wow.
Or 1941, Parent-Teacher Association. Students today depend on these expensive fountain pens. They no longer can write with a straight pen and nib. We parents must not allow them to wallow in such luxury to the detriment of their learning and so forth. But what about now? What about now? Here's a school bus. Just an every old normal looking school bus. Until we have a look inside.
Oh! Oh, wow.
Interesting, isn't it? It'd be interesting if we had the time to just to get you to talk about some of your emotional responses as educators when you first saw that. Okay, so we have all this technology that means that we can be connected in a whole different series of ways with devices that are incredibly portable these days, smartphones in our pockets, all connected to this thing called the internet. Let's have a look at some of the shaping influences this internet has had. I'd like to start with talking about this idolisation even of information. But I'll begin by talking about this old adage. Do you know this one, that to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail? You heard that? And I've been a woodwork teacher, by the way, too, and let me tell you, with a Year 9 boy with a hammer. Let me tell you everything, including his my students. Okay. Mark Twain. No. Was it Mark Twain? Okay. And Postman said this, very helpful in his book, Technopoly. He says, in the year 1500, 50 years after the printing press was invented, we did not have old Europe plus the printing press. We had different Europe. After television, the United States was not America plus television. Television gave a new coloration to every political campaign, to every home, to every school, to every church, to every industry. And Postman talks about, what is this, by the way?
Telegraph.
The telegraph. Yeah, I know the name of this particular thing. It's the Morse code thingy, that's what most people tend to say. It's called the Morse key. It was at either end of the telegraph technology. The telegraph was probably the first way, the first time that people could take information from one place to another faster than at which they could physically carry it. So, before the telegraph, maybe it was on a fast horse or something like that. It was only in one direction and it was only to one other place. Someone took me aside once and said, "But what about smoke signals?" Yeah, okay, smoke signals. Fine. But until then, maybe the train or a fast horse, the telegraph. So, if we were to push that and to sort of poke on that a little bit, and I'm going to change that adage to say, to a man with a telegraph, all information is seen as good. Man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Suddenly, we had the ability to report, say from Detroit to California, overnight, some of the crimes, the statistics that had happened through the night, and send them across in the morning, in fact, to lots of cities. And suddenly we went, okay, we've got this technology, it must be good to do that and to use it that way. And I think that's the start of what we might call an idolisation of information. Postman says, the telegraph may have made the country into one neighbourhood, but it was a peculiar one, populated by strangers who knew nothing but the most superficial facts about each other. And if I can take the liberty of rewording that to say the internet, and even more so the internet, may have made the world into one neighbourhood, but it was a peculiar one populated by strangers who knew nothing but the most superficial facts about each other. A favourite preacher of mine, Tim Keller, says, idolatry is when we take a good thing. It's good to be informed, isn't it? Information's a good thing. When we make it an ultimate thing, we make it an idol. Such that in Habits of the High-Tech Heart, Quinton Schultz says this, we are succumbing to informationism, he calls it. I love Marx talking about, and got us to think specifically of a religion, a religious perspective, being something that you consider to be divine. Is that the source of that? So if we think of that, when we think about informationism, it's a non-discerning, vacuous faith in the collection and dissemination of information as a route to social progress and personal happiness. It tends to be now knowledge about rather than knowledge of things. You see the shallowing? And Schultz goes on to say this, as the pool of information grows, our actual knowing seems to be declining. Go figure. And I love this quote. You with me? Yeah. Reading online about the needs of the world, for instance, is never the same as personally knowing people in need. Isn't that a good little catch-cry to keep and carry around with you as you embark and embrace all these technologies? I found this little cartoon. It's the information age. No, I have no idea where your next meal is coming from. We become informational voyeurs of life rather than responsible participants in the knowing of our own cultures and communities. Because access to information, just simply being connected to that information, seems to have become more important than actually knowing and understanding. And I found this poster recently. It's a person, if you can't see, on a cliff with their computer. And the caption on the poster was, blogging. Never before have so many people with so little to say said so much to so few. You see what I did there? From the sublime. So I think we're actually starting to lose our ability to discern between what is valuable and what is valueless in terms of content, information, data. Because context is diminishing. We are, as these technologies become more ubiquitous, we are further and further reducing the context in which the information is shared. Albert Borgman says this. He says we're seeing the replacement of wonder and dazzle. Sorry, the replacement of wonder with dazzle, and this is the point I want to make: communication with decontextualized information. So we would say that relationally, in communication is important, is it not? But as we tend to start to emphasise and head towards decontextualising information, what's going to happen to relational community, if you like? It's going to start to diminish, isn't it? The more we emphasise decontextualising, are we seeing this happen? Because knowing is actually being trivialised, it's being demoted. What do I mean? Well, if we consider a kind of scale like this that goes from data, just raw information, we collect bits and pieces of data together, we have information, but we know that that can lead us to knowledge. And ultimately we understand, with a biblical worldview, that that can actually lead us to wisdom. When we understand the big picture story of this world, we understand that Jesus is somehow mysteriously the source of ultimate wisdom, right? But the more our technologies that we are developing, the more technologies that our young people are embracing and our educational pedagogies are embracing, the more that they become central in our lives and even more and more efficient, what's going to happen down here? They're going to start to have a diminishing emphasis.
It's almost like an overload. There's no sort of gaps in the reception of information to be able to actually process any bits to any great degree.
Yep.
Because there's always something new.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a closed circuit.
Yeah, nice way of thinking of it. Yep, it's a closed circuit. It doesn't actually go out, break out. That's right. Because it seems that information's become a kind of end in itself. You can watch a TV news program now on current affairs, and it's not enough to have the person speaking to you. They've got to have some facts in the background, and then there's a banner now. Did you have this in North America, in England, New Zealand? A banner going across with these just completely out of context bits of information. 12 dead in a bus crash in Venezuela. What do we do with that?
England wins World Cup.
Yeah, which will come. But we know, of course, that accumulation does not actually equal wisdom itself. And we've got to remember that. We've got to teach our teachers to be teaching that as well. Okay. What is this picture? In fact, I'd like you to turn to the person next to you while I have a drink and just say to them, what feelings or what ideas does this picture generate for you? Just have a chat with the person next to you.
It's practice. I have about several times. I have that one. Yeah, because I don't have to, listen to the end that you have to find, and the end that most people have is just to get the information.
Then we don't have to go I don't have to worry about
It also means that we have the information as we go, and we take it to others. Just Adding wisdom to that.
We've got a positive approach.
As we go. What about this?
Scary. Students like that.
It's a very good one. The image of the baby with the
It's good. Okay. Yes, okay. I was going to do that, thank you. Anyone would like to share some of their responses to that? Fruit, thank you.
From the orchard. What was that?
Fruit from the orchard. Yes, would anyone like to share their fruit from the orchard?
We were just saying it's
Your teaching works, Mark.
almost like we become just somewhere to store the information.
Oh,
So we just
yeah.
become storage units as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, as opposed to knowers. Yeah.
We talked about it being useful. When we were looking at it, we thought, you won't ever forget your lectures. You can get up there and talk, knowledge is instantly there.
Yes.
And then we finished off with saying, so we don't have to teach.
Right.
You wouldn't have to have a lecture stuff.
I thought of the singularity, because while we're uploading myself, what is no longer necessary, just become part of the matrix.
Yeah.
So maybe a day will come when people will spend a lot of money studying the radiation because of these things.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yeah. That's another factor, John.
And I thought of education as it used to be, just simply downloading, transfer of information.
Yeah. Yeah. Sue?
We thought about how taking in information like that doesn't allow for you to actually get rid of information that you don't want or that doesn't resonate with you as you go. You know, like, yes, we could remember all of our lectures, but there might be bits and pieces of those that we don't want to remember, where that forces you to actually have it in your head, and so you don't discern the information as you go. It's just stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I also found this quote, and obviously you can't verify it, but it's probably true. A person is now subject to more information in a day than a person in the Middle Ages has access to in their entire life.
Yeah.
It's probably true, isn't it? If you think about all of the movies, television, books, internet, so forth. T.S. Eliot, in his poem The Rock, just a little snippet from that. Where is the wisdom that we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? So then that actually poses the question, well, where then do we find truth? And where, for a digital native, do they understand that they can seek out and find truth then among all of this plethora of data and information that they swim in? Oh, is that a question? A fair enough question that follows?
Yeah.
Just as a little aside, because pedagogically it's good to the American Dialect Society of have this word of the year. A few years ago, this was their word of the year. Can I have another drum roll, please? Their word of the year was truthiness. Truthiness. Refers to the quality of stating concepts or facts one wishes or believes to be true, rather than concepts or facts known to be true. Apparently a professor was referring to this, and he also said that it's things that are truthy, not facty. So we could talk a lot about that notion of creating truth, constructivism and so forth, as we have, but we just focus on a couple of technologies. So what's this one? Wikipedia. So Wikipedia, do you have a policy here at BCI at all about Wikipedia and students using it and referring to it and so forth? Is that something that's been discussed and went through? Yeah. I do. So sort of individual ones? Yeah. What do you say to them?
We ask them in the main not to use it.
Yeah.
And
in terms of referencing, and that their references need to include a variety of printed text related resources, so that explaining the critique and verification.
I encourage my students when they're reading the text to use it as really a deeper dictionary, so that it just gets them connected. They may not use it as a source in studying on a paper, things like that. But it's a wonderful augment, I feel, to reading texts that they sometimes don't understand the words, concepts people refer to.
Who has used Wikipedia in the last 3 days while they've been? Yeah, exactly. It's a good tool. Peter, do you want to say something?
I was going to agree with John and say, look, with students who don't understand, if you talk about a person or a concept, I often refer them to Wikipedia, because the research coming through now shows that it's just as legitimate or academically virile as Encyclopedia Britannica. So for those students who, are learning about things for the first time, it really does help them out to gain a wider, deeper understanding.
Is that, that they can actually contribute to it.
That's right. Yeah. So that is the interesting thing here, isn't it? Comparing, as we just did, World Book, or was it Encyclopedia Britannica?
Yeah.
And Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is constructed by a whole community of users. And there's a sort of iterative process that goes on, and you work down to what the whole community agrees on as what is truth in the Wikipedia sense. Whereas World Book, Encyclopedia, or whatever, in the past you drew on a body of experts who had studied and spent time in a scholarly way, focusing and learning about certain things, and then they would write. But this was put together by a multinational corporation, and sort of with profit as the bottom line type approach sitting underneath that as well. But this here is totally free, and so they're the two kind of. But what is the Wikipedia technology shaping in the worldview of the person who lives in a world where that is their first point of call, and it's ubiquitous everywhere, and it's just how they think. What does it do to their understanding of what has authority? Well, authority is by consensus, isn't it? It shapes a view in their mind that authority and truth can come by consensus. So we've got to be wary of that. Now, yes, I think it's a fantastic tool. Have used it a number of times this week. But the world, to every man with a hammer, everything looks like a no, right? Well, what about just the idea of Google? How much is Google just simply an everyday tool like a pen was for us growing up, for our digital natives, right? So what does it do to their shaping of, well, every time they search for something, things come back as a rank, don't they?
Yeah, that's right.
So that rank is going to be shaping in them a sense of, well, the things that have a higher rank have a higher authority. But of course we know that Google, the way that it actually works out its ranking is based on a whole heap of algorithms that are based on a whole heap of variables, including advertising and marketing and the number of hits that other websites have got and so forth.
And that continually changes from day to day.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, definitely.
And can you pay money to Google to get yourself
Yes.
Money talks.
Money talks with Google, and you can get yourself higher ranked on payment. Yep. And so that needs to be unfolded to them, doesn't it? We think we need to be taking every opportunity to teach a level of discernment to our young people about this. So what is truth, says Tim Schalese? He says, it is genuine, it is real, it is pure, it is what God thinks. Do you want to know what is true about anything? Find out what God thinks about it and think the same thing. That is truth. Alright, that's informationism. Let's look at this notion that they are living highly mediated lives. some form of media, some form of technology, usually screen-based technologies these days, is mediating between them and some aspect of God's real world. And it's very important to make the point that not only are they the most mediated generation to ever exist, they're sort of, it's mediation on steroids, really. Buckingham says this: as early as the 1960s, it was apparent that children were spending more time watching television than they were at school. And while with the advent of other screen-based media, children's television viewing has slightly declined in recent years, the overall picture is clear. Children spend more time with media of various kinds than they do on any other activity apart from sleep. Think about your digital natives, and I don't think it's just children now. I think we can be talking about our teenagers and young 20-year-olds, for instance, as well. More time with media than anything else besides sleeping. So the obvious example here is Facebook, isn't it? And how Facebook is a mediator between relationships. Okay? It's a way of communicating via the technology. And what shaping effects does that have? Powers says this. He's talking about, he's specifically referring to the notion that families now don't gather around the central television in the lounge room, but they actually disperse out to their own bedrooms and they've got their own computers and what have you there. And he says, why not flee the few of the living room for the many of the screen, where all relationships are flattened into one user-friendly mosaic, a human collage that's endlessly clickable and never demands our full attention. Isn't that right? I got hundreds of friends. Yeah, but my 100, 200 Facebook friends never really demand my full attention, do they? A human collage that's endlessly clickable. Sherry Turkle, a book that I'm reading through at the moment, called Alone Together, says this helpfully. It supports an emotional style. I should preface this. She's actually doing a whole ton of qualitative research amongst young people, and by lots and lots of surveys, and a lot of the responses are in her book. You're all reading that, I'll put it back to that. And she reports a theme that's coming through her survey, that younger people are saying they don't even really fully experience an emotion until they have posted that, tweeted that, or Facebooked it, or whatever. That's coming out in these surveys that she's been doing. She said it supports an emotional style in which feelings are not fully experienced until they are communicated. Put otherwise, there is every opportunity to form a thought by sending out for comments. That's the language that some of these young people are using. I'm switching everything over to the internet. My phone, my bills, my TV, my human contact. Yeah. This whole notion of the need for us to disconnect so that we can truly, authentically connect. It's actually a growing movement of thought. If you Google disconnect to connect, it's a kind of a little catch cry that's, there's a sort of groundswell movement of people reacting to all this hyper-connection. I'm going to show you a little video. Interestingly, this is a Thai commercial. You see if you can see it, what you think the commercial is advertising.
คนรอบข้างบ้างดีแท็กเชื่อในของพอดี
Anyone know what the... Anyone speak Thai and know what the actual commercial was advertising? Interesting, it's advertising a telecommunications company, a mobile phone company. That's a kind of a fairly bold commercial on their behalf, isn't it? But it's kind of sentimentalising and it's a little bit cliche, isn't it? But there is a power to that, isn't there? It would be worthwhile, some of our young people actually being exposed to that at an emotional level so they could be challenged about their addiction to that internet-based digital connection that they have. Ever been speaking, having a one-to-one or whatever with a 20-something and they're texting at the same time? A young teacher in a class I was doing said, I was actually had lunch with a friend of mine. She wanted to catch up, and I was a bit frustrated because she was texting while we were having this lunch together, and she was annoyed. Anyway, they finished their lunch. They went home. It turned out she was Facebooking, posting on her Facebook wall about the fact she was having lunch with this person. Yeah. Hyper-connected, which leads to this notion of living kind of virtual lives. We've kind of got two lives. There's this real-world life, and there's this digitally connected life, which in many ways is quite virtualised. Push the example to its extreme. You've got this web-based phenomenon called Second Life, where you can go. This is a catch cry from the marketing. Connect, shop, work, love, explore, be different. Free yourself, free your mind, change your looks, love your life. I think that sums it up really well. A person sitting at their desk, they're bored, middle-aged man, but he's on Second Life, and he can create himself to whoever he wants to be, and he can get that little bit boost of energy he needs because there's virtual him who's much better. Here's some snapshots of people's avatars and scenes within this Second Life. Anyone been on Second Life?
Other than you?
I actually cannot remember if I have. I'm not sure. I think you have to pay.
No, I've only been on it in a network conference.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of educators in America are actually doing some networking and conferencing online in Second Life. So here's an example of a professional development meeting that was going on. Let me read to you something from Jade Turkle, Sherry Turkle, I should say, about Jade and Pete. This is from her research, speaking to Pete. On most days, Pete logs on to Second Life before leaving for work. Pete and Jade talk by typing and then erotically engage their avatars, something that Second Life software makes possible with special animations. Boundaries between life and game are not easy to maintain. Online, Peter and Jade talk about sex and Second Life gossip, but they also talk about money, the recession, work, and matters of health. Pete is on cholesterol-lowering medication that is only partially successful. Pete says that it's hard to talk to his real wife, Alison, about his anxieties. She gets too worried that I might die and leave her alone, quote. But he can talk to Jade. Pete says, Second Life gives me a better relationship than I have in real life. This is where I feel most myself. Jade accepts who I am. My relationship with Jade makes it possible for me to stay in my marriage and my family. The ironies are apparent. An avatar who has never seen or spoken to him in person and to whom he appears in a body nothing like his own seems to him most accepting of his truest self. And don't forget that Jade could be a 60-year-old man or a 13-year-old boy. And Turkle goes on to say that when part of your life is lived in virtual places, it can be, Second Life, or it could even be a computer game, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute, Or a social networking site. You are just as much creating a virtual self with Facebook and the way you construct your profile and your photo and so forth. When part of your life is lived in a virtual place, a vexed relationship develops between what is true and what is true here, true in simulation. A vexed relationship, confusion reigns. It's, as I was saying, your Facebook profile is, in a sense, a virtual you that you are creating and maintaining. So, to the issue of online gaming, and so Facebook may be more so with our girls, possibly not, but boys definitely with online gaming. This is War of the Worlds. So think about some of the worldview shaping effects that immersing yourself in these virtual worlds will give you, especially when you are so immersed that the relationship between real life and online life has become vexed. Which person are you there as the... You're the person with the axe, by the way, not the person on the ground. And violence is a very strong theme for some of these things. Apologies for the graphic of some of these. So that's online gaming. Vexed relationship between the world and virtual. And YouTube as well. You know the notion of, yes, there's lots of funny, cool videos on YouTube, sure. But the notion of a vlog, a video log, like a blog is a weblog. Well, a vlog is you recording to camera regularly a kind of diary and then posting that on YouTube. So you have lots of people doing that and creating a sort of an online presence of themselves via doing that. And I'll show you an example of a vlog in a minute. But this phenomena is a massive part of the YouTube community. Just people in their rooms talking to camera. And sometimes these people can have tens of thousands of hits on their
There's a
videos.
guy in the States who that is his occupation, is that he vlogs his life. They even took the video into giving birth to their child. But their whole life is, he does it every day. And that he gets his income actually from expressing his life.
What is that doing to your view of what is a good character and how you are seen by others? Postman, back in 1993, said this. He said, will the computer raise egocentrism to the status of a virtue? We didn't have the internet in its current shape then, but he was wondering whether the PC would do that, just the desktop computer. Think about what the internet has actually grown. Here's some research that was done at San Diego University, longitudinal study, 1982 to 2006, 16,000 students. And they measured something called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory, the NPI. No idea what that is, but I gather a measurement, quantified measurement of narcissism. The results, they found a 30% increase in the NPI over those years. And from the report they say that gadgets and online social networking sites have stoked, I like that because it recognises the fact that it's always been there, but it's stoked the self-loving tendencies of modern students. Let me show you a video, a vlog of a young girl who, I'm going to show you this particular vlog because she speaks of her motivation of why you would do this. Her name's Nadine.
I am an attention whore. Hi, hello there. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. You're all attention whores. Look at me. I want attention. I want attention. Lots of attention. Everybody who posts a video on YouTube about themselves is an attention whore. Don't even try to deny it. You're looking for attention, so you're an attention whore. Just admit it. You do it and you love it. And you love it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting attention. A little bit of attention or a lot of attention. I mean, really, would you rather be ignored, passed over, forgotten? Yes, I'm a bit of a narcissistic individual, but I like myself, and I hope you like yourself too. But do I think I'm perfect, amazing, the most funniest and entertaining person I've ever met or seen? No. No. I'm just like me, however the heck I am. It's a wonderful feeling you get when you notice that somebody noticed you, that somebody paid attention to you, and that they cared what you had to say. I mean, it's one of the best feelings in the world, really. Why wouldn't you want that? Or at least some of that, or a little bit of that. Thanks for watching. Bye. Let's have attention. Oh, look at me. Ha, 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 ha. Look what I can do.
I've seen Nadine a few times now. She still makes me laugh at the end of this. Hey, what's your response to Nadine? What was your feelings there? Mark, did you want to comment?
No, I just think it's brilliant. I mean, brilliant that you found that. It's incredibly revealing about this trajectory into narcissism, and it is very, very disturbing.
Yeah, it's become a virtue. It's become
Yeah.
acceptable. It's not something that we have but are embarrassed about and try and hide. We actually flirt it.
The opposing view to that, though, is that the suicide rate of teenagers has increased similarly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, are our children getting detached from everything except their self?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's total autonomy, isn't it, in many ways?
Yeah, or it's a super cry for help. I'd be curious the last time she sat down for dinner with her family.
Yeah. Yeah, good word.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because that
And
cry
she's
for
very aware
attention,
of
it's
the
probably
narcissism.
cry for connection.
Yeah, could be. She has, by the way, tens of thousands of followers.
Does she?
Subscribe to her channel. Yeah.
She's very self-aware, though, of what she's doing. You know, she's reflected on what she's doing and why she's doing it, which I don't think a lot of other people would. A lot of young people would do that, but not understand.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
how she does, how reflective she is.
You know, in India, what worries the parents of those who go to information and communication technology is that many lose interest in getting married.
Right? Really? Because they're replacing that intimacy of connection with online? Or?
Yeah, there should be that.
Okay.
They get fat salary,
Yeah.
they're comfortable, but they don't want a family.
Okay. Interesting.
In all she said, though, there wasn't actually much that she said in a lot of ways. But it's sort of like a sort of shallowness. I mean, we can sort of see the depth when we look at it from maybe different worldviews. What would you like kids who are still entrenched in that kind of...
I think it'd be great to show Nadine's vlog, this particular one,
that's right.
to young people and talk about it with them.
Yeah.
And ask them what they think about that, whether they agree, and if they agree, why? How? The T-shirt I found recently, and I'll focus in on it. Love a Venn diagram on a T-shirt. If you cross narcissism with ADHD, you get MySpace. If you cross narcissism with stalking, you get Facebook. You combine them all together and you get Twitter. Now, Dale Keane, look, I have to confess to not reading this book, but I've heard it referred to, this notion of the I world, which he contrasts with the T world. The T world, he says, is the world of traditions, the world that you know your identity because society kind of gives that to you, and you know where you're heading in life, that's already been kind of mapped out for you. As opposed to the I world, where you are completely free in all senses. And you just think of the I technologies. You watch an iPod promo video and you'll get a very strong sense of this. He actually says it's kind of like the T world being like a river. It's a river in which you are in the river, but you actually have some fairly defined boundaries, traditions, some expectations, and so forth. There are sort of authority and things being placed upon you, and that you are moving together with everybody else down this river. But the metaphor pushed further for the I world is that it's like young people are in an ocean. There are no boundaries. They can go left, right, up, down, around, you know, and what's left for them is really only a sense of self-invention. Because they have no direction, they have no boundaries, they have no Am I explaining that
Yeah.
well enough?
Yeah. Very good.
So what they're left with is this constant, and these technologies fuel this constant sense of makeover, of I now need to invent myself and reinvent myself, and that's what kind of life is about, one of the aspects. And Tim Chalise says this: many of us are more concerned with who we are in a mediated context than who we are before those who live in the same neighbourhood or attend the same church. You ever look at a Facebook page of one of your students and you look at the photo even and you'll go, I don't even recognise them. They spend so much time nurturing how their photos look and how their profile presents. This is a picture of a book of the same name, Generation Me. I love this. Again, this is a snapshot of an iWorld digital immigrant, digital native. Look, I'm cool. I've got my thumb here, I'm cool, right? I'm also sexy. It's got that kind of sassy stance to it, as well as being bare and naked, of course. I'm connected. I've got my thing. I've got my iPod or iPhone there. Where are we? And I'm plugged in, I'm listening. I've got a tat. You know, it's part of that makeover me. And I've got piercings. Okay. Of course, nothing wrong with these things, but it's an indication of that sense of continually having to invent myself. I like that picture. It says so much.
Very good.
The most mediated generation to ever have existed, and mediation on steroids, as I said. So what happens if we move along this continuum between an unmediated intimacy and a mediated life? Well, some of the things that can happen is we can actually end up with a greater dependency on our mediating technologies. Right? So we develop this dependency. Ever stood in front of you, those who are teachers, in front of, say, a Year 9 class and said we're going to go on a school camp, and you actually can't take your phones or your iPads or your iPhones or your iPods or your iWhatevers. And in fact, there's no connection where we're going to it. They freak out. It's actually, it gives them anxiety. It's been written about. It also, as you move along this continuum, causes relational laziness. Why connect with people in the living room when I can go to a human collage, which is endlessly clickable and never demands my full attention? And you end up this nurturing of this mediated self-identity. You become, not only are you vexed between what is in my virtual life and what is my real life, but I end up nurturing my online identity. No, I'm not talking about Twitter. I literally want you to follow me. Now, of course, there are benefits, aren't there? Like we've said, every good part of creation has its good creational essence to it. So there's great benefits. But let's make sure that as we tap into those benefits, that we are committed to an unmediated intimacy as well. And that we look as much as we can to avoid the distancing effects that they bring. So teach your teachers for their sake, but also teach your teachers to be teaching their students to be committed to unmediated intimacy and to avoid the distancing effects. Another movie.
Okay, Lindsay, you're up.
Today I'm going to talk about Patty. Patty's best characteristics, she's stupid. Stupid and ugly. Everything she does is ugly. Watch her eat. Watch her stuff her face. Look at her. Greasy hair, dirty fingernails. It makes me want to vomit. Her dad doesn't work, they have no money. That's why she wears that nasty pink sweater. Everyone hates her, even the teachers, and they're supposed to like everyone. Get a life, Patty. Thank you.
Okay, I'm losing the video quality there, but the caption that came up at the end is, if you wouldn't say it in person, why would you say it online? And I think that's that whole cyberbullying phenomenon has become a reality because of that mediating effect. What about the increase in community? People say, yes, but it's great for community. Yeah, maybe. This is a map of Facebook and the spatial distributions of connections across the planet. But isn't it community that's much more about shared interest rather than shared life or shared space? Look, this is a ukulele, my first ukulele that I made last year. I didn't get a book, I didn't have plans, I didn't go to a class or anything like that. I simply joined a couple of forums and I followed a couple of YouTube channels and I was able to make a ukulele from scratch just by doing those things. You know, so yes, there's some richness there. But if I for a minute think that my membership in those forums and YouTube channels is community for me, I could get unstuck, couldn't I? Wellman says this very helpfully. He says, online community equals networked individualism. I think it's a great phrase. LearnToDance.com, right click, left click, right, left click, left click, left, right click, and so on. What about dependency? We've spoken a little bit about how as we head towards a mediated life, we'll head towards dependency. Let me show you a little video.
That's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody!
And it goes on. You get the idea. I sort of played as a bit of a laugh. So this brings me to kind of the pointy end a little, where I'm talking about, I think, a digital way of knowing, a digital epistemology, a digital world-shaped way of knowing. So I think that we can talk about virtual knowing, a mediated knowing, and a self-seeking sort of knowing, if you like. There's a number of ways that we could capture this. Let me just have a go at a very simple way. I mean, knowing, as we've said over the last few days, experience is a part of that. Our culture is a part of it, and these things are linked as well. Reason or evidence can be a part of that, but of course the Bible can be a part of that. Well, what I want to suggest, and this is oversimplified, I know, but I want to suggest that technology, it's always had a part to play in our knowing, even if it was a plough. But I am suggesting that the ubiquitous nature of these digital technologies have ramped that up, that it's almost a thing in itself that is shaping our knowing. Would that be fair? For our young people. So as NT, I know we talked about, Ken talked about, I think it was, the subject and the knowing, and there was some dispute about that. Let's not go down that path, other than to say that I think N.T. Wright helpfully says this, that in terms of epistemology, we have a subject and an object, and we get to know the object, but in this sense, the object serves the subject. But a biblical epistemology, he says, is when the subject knows the object by serving it. And so he says that what we are called to and what in the resurrection we are equipped for is a knowing in which we are involved as subjects, but as self-giving, not as self-seeking. Isn't that radical? Isn't that a radical knowing? In other words, knowing that is a form of love. That's in Surprised by Hope. So with digital epistemology then, of course, we still have the subject and the object and the knowing, but the technologies, I suggest, are meaning that it is harder for us to know by serving, because the technology is mediating between the real authentic relationship. And so the object serving the subject is being nurtured and fueled. Albert Borgman, Christian philosopher, talks about this sort of, he calls it the device paradigm. Some characteristics, he says. An increasing disengagement from life as fabrics of intimacy are being lost. There is a move out of reality into the bluff and illusion of virtual reality. By the way, can I have a few more minutes? Would that be okay with everybody?
Yeah, go for it.
Rather than cut it short. Thank you. He says there's the replacement of wonder with dazzle, which we've already looked at, and communication with decontextualised information. Loss of civility as people are removed from the thick world of context. I love that phrase, removed from the thick world of context. Obviously, the opposite is then the shallow world of the virtual. A decline in the ability of people to remember, imagine and persevere in thought. Are you finding that amongst your students?
Yeah, yes.
An increasing commitment to technological leisure and entertainment. Can kids go on holidays now without their devices and still have fun? An increasing boredom, and I've added hopelessness, despair and depression. So what? So what does all this mean for us as educators of educators? Well, I think we need to help our teachers, our students, to navigate through all of this, but so that they can help their students to navigate through it. So we know that a biblical worldview is this. I'm going to skip this because... Or, no, what do you think when I first say God's beautiful creation? What's your first thought?
Outside.
What did you think of?
I think that's it, absolutely.
Yeah, but what
do I see?
Image came to mind? Yeah.
People.
People? Often,
Anything outside.
Outside.
Yeah.
The natural creation. Here's some pictures of New Zealand, which I found such a beautiful place. Looking forward to having a look around in the next few days. But that's often what people think of as God's beautiful creation. Or they might say butterflies or waterfalls or something like this. And of course we've got to also consider the very micro and also we can't just think of the earth as God's creation.
Yeah.
So yes, God's good creation includes panda bears and tropical islands. Not telling you anything you don't know yet, but also it's got to include family, the notion of family. We didn't create that. We didn't invent it, did we?
No.
Justice is part of God's good creation. The arts, communicating, storytelling through painting or storytelling through drama or music. Laughter. An unself-conscious, humorous interchange between two people. Is God not creationally involved in that? Agriculture, nurturing of the land so that we can cultivate and grow food for ourselves. Competition. A bit of game of cricket and a bit of friendly sledging, which Mark's been pretty good at, I must say. Government, politics, yes, this is the Australian Parliament House. But, there's good creational essence in these things as well, friendship and so forth. The trading system of having money and so forth. Technology, this is where we're getting to. Technology is part of our ability to invent and innovate is part of God's good creation gift to us. I thought I was onto something, but I can't figure out how to move it. So, of course, New Zealand, if we looked at some pictures before, this is another picture of New Zealand, this is Auckland. There is good creation, God's beautiful creation is evidenced there as well, isn't it? As a kind of cultural development of all the good things. Just because prostitution exists, pornography doesn't make sex wrong. Or because there's problems with the internet, doesn't mean that the internet is bad. Of course we know this. We know that it's good creation, it's been distorted, but we can be a part of the redeeming of that as we head towards the new creation. I'll skip that for today. So technology is a creational gift, but it's like this gift, isn't it? It's a gift that has a hidden army of subtle seduction sitting inside. John Van Dyke says this about Christian education. Christian schools continuously need to ask fundamental questions about life, our culture, and the spirits that roam around uttering derailing voices. Christian schools search the nooks and crannies of the garden, creation, to see what is happening, what has gone wrong, the distortions, and how to heal and restore redemption. I'm going to suggest that these technologies have very strong derailing voices for our young people. So it raises the questions for them of what is knowing, what is authentic relationship, virtuous character. Where do I source authority? What is true community? And how valuable is unmediated living? What is the good life and how is it to be known, the good life that God has created? So I want to suggest that you should teach your teachers to teach their students, and I'm going to give you 5 quick things as a summary. 1, teach them to seek to know rather than just be informed. Allow knowing to then lead you to wisdom. You don't have to scribble down because I will make this available to you. Be careful with informational consensus. A large number of people can collectively agree on the following truth. Thirdly, realise that even though technology suggests it, the world doesn't revolve around you. For embrace authentic community, don't just settle for networked individualism. 5, seek to engage with God's real world rather than mediated versions of it. And I'll stop there. I won't stop there.
Chris, on that last point, I think that's why David Smith's talks that he's been doing the last couple of years is so interesting to teachers, because he's really talking about that in terms of looking at the examples in the textbooks.
Yes.
And he talks about how in his German textbook they had these very bland, made-up characters that were shocking all the time in his German language book, and he's changed it to having a real-life, interesting, old person who's lived through the Holocaust and introducing his class to them, that person, and what a difference it's made to his pedagogy. He's engaging with the fact that we've got so many mediated versions of everything.
Excellent. Would you like me to give thanks for lunch?